and can help identify Pflugerville as it grows. The Rockman sculpture is a traveling sculpture, which again kind of speaks to where you have the generation that's been here and then the new people coming in. It's a traveler. It's kind of a fun symbolic sculpture because if you look at the backpack, there are a lot of different pieces. And it speaks about how we pick up things along the way, skills, memories, inspiration, imagination, and it even has a companion pebble made out of rocks. And so it kind of brightens your day, and that's kind of how the sculpture came together. I originally, and still have, 4 children ranging from now 16 to 30. When the
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Pflugerville City Council work session and I call it to order at 5 o'clock. This afternoon we have 3 items. Our first one is 2A, discussion regarding Downtown East, an update on the Downtown East project. Emily.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're excited to bring you another update on our Downtown East project. Joining me this evening is our design team. Randall Matsuno, he's with McKen Adams Architecture, Alex John with LPA Architects, our City Hall architects, Corin Crawford with Griffin Swinnerton, and Bob Galloway with FGM Architects, our rec center architect. They'll join me in the various elements of the presentation. Tonight we'll give you a project update. We'll go over where we are with infrastructure, City Hall, the rec center, as well as an update on the Gin Tract. A little bit of the schedule. Y'all have seen this many times from the time we acquired land. We are almost to that construction start circle there at the very far right. So we're super excited about that. Hope you are as well. Today we have completed many steps of the entitlement process, including the rezoning. That was a PUD that was approved by City Council. Over the summer, the preliminary and final plat approvals occurred by Planning and Zoning Commission just earlier this month, and the right-of-way acquisition approvals passed City Council. We're working on finalizing those documents with the last 2 property owners that were needed in order to proceed with Main Street. Tonight, as we walk through each of the elements, our City Council subcommittees for both facilities and City Hall have seen some of these. There are some elements that they haven't seen. They're hot off the presses for the City Hall, as well as some of the exterior elevations for the rec center. As we've been working through these, we are also being mindful of the budget and also thinking about the interest earned on the funding in order to ensure that we're not value engineering out elements that are key to this particular project. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Corin to walk us through our infrastructure.
Great to be here. Good evening. I'll dive right in as an update on the infrastructure project itself. We've made significant progress, as Emily talked about, with respect to the entitlements and the approvals that are happening. So a lot of the upfront design work to get us to this point is something that'll be quite familiar to the council today. The site, as we all know very well, is a phased approach to the project, and phase 1 that's in front of you includes the infrastructure to extend Main Street from Railroad all the way to FM 685 with traffic improvements along FM 685. We have the overall internal roadways getting completed, streets B and streets C. That essentially forms the grid for the project where all the other parcels fall into place. The 2 major buildings to be built would be City Hall and the Rec Center. The red that's integrated. The pieces of red are integrated in both City Hall and Rec Center are retail. So in the City Hall, we'll have an integrated cafe, piece of retail there at about 1,250 square feet. And then the Rec Center is a really innovative and unique mixed-use rec center where it will be integrated with 10,500 square feet approximately of retail there, and then surface parking to accommodate that. All well established, nothing new there. So the parts that are new really have to do with implementation of the project itself. So if we were to look at how it's generally all playing out with respect to the approvals that we're getting in the upfront, in the fast approaching groundbreaking, the project in general is thought of as a phase 1A, which would be everything on the Pfluger tract, encircled in red, and then towards the west of that, the extension piece of Main Street to Railroad would be in a subsequent phase, all kind of layered in sequentially as we go. So groundbreaking scheduled for December of this year, and then once that happens, you're looking at essentially a year of infrastructure build out where phase 1A and phase 1B, would just continue sequentially from that, and we're staggering the approvals. So that's generally how it's all shaking out from an implementation standpoint, all coordinated well with, as Emily talked about, the parcel acquisitions that have all been approved and moving forward with the council itself. Along with that, in parallel with the execution of the project, we're the overall approach, we call it fast track construction, where you can layer in pieces of construction while you in parallel have other elements that are currently being designed. So the plaza is one of the last pieces of the construction overall. After the rec center is built, after City Hall is built, that's when you typically do all your landscaping. So the plaza itself will be one of the last things to actually be constructed on the site. And so we're now starting to pin down what the plaza concept ultimately looks like. It's still in a conceptual phase, just as our concepts a year ago evolved. This will continue to evolve, but we did want to give you a look at, a preliminary sketch of a plaza concept that would be adjacent to the rec center. Whole lot of time spent intentionally designing the plaza and the frontage of the rec center so that the two coexist. They don't feel like they aren't that they aren't thought, the coexistence, the synergies between the two haven't been really intimately thought through. And FGMA and Bob here can talk a little bit about how that process worked on the building design. And we've got Randall from McCann Adams Studios who can elaborate a little bit more on the kind of elements that we're thinking about for the plaza. So Randall, please give us a breakdown of some of the elements of the plaza.
So the plaza, as it is an early sketch, we have been collaborating with the city as well as our adjacent building partners to develop really seamless edges to the plaza so that both facilities have strong relationships. So on a north-south access across Main Street, we have a walkway that connects directly on access with City Hall, their atrium, to a large open lawn space that is envisioned to have various city functions, have stages, a great open space during various festivals or functions. That is tied seamlessly with the recreation center, not sort of blending those edges between the outdoor functions as well as what happens within the recreation center itself. There's a main stage that's envisioned to the north of the site with a potential future building and various services that support various outdoor events for storage or whatnot. We also wanted to break down somewhat the formality of the space, providing little pockets of outdoor spaces, so where there's clusters of trees, there's maybe some informal outdoor seating and game areas. To the right, there's also the introduction of some water elements and features that kind of bring the nature to the heart of this area in various capacities. to the additionally blending the edges along D Street, we envision this as a pedestrian paseo that will help support future redevelopment on the priority parcel that is just to the west of the plaza, and will help to sort of frame those edges, and to also create a nice access for those once the future phases to the north along C Street get built out. So really working to assure that all of those immediate phases as well as future phases are addressed in the design.
And one,
What-
yeah, please.
Go ahead. What's your anticipated capacity? How many pedestrians do we get in this area?
I'm not exactly.
In terms of if I have a concert or an event, I need to cap it at less than 1,000, looks like. I can't tell.
We haven't necessarily studied that, but we do envision large community events such as
Slice of Pflugerville.
Yes, Slice Pflugerville. I'm not exactly sure the capacity. Some of it will also is also developed in terms of the parking analysis and being able to support the capacity.
So one of the things I would like to know in the weekly or the follow-up is how many people can stay on that lawn?
Sure.
How many attendees do we have? I understand parking and food trucks and all the other things, but just in terms of that space right there,
Yeah.
what does that support?
What does that look like? One rule of thumb for that when we study this is one person for every 10 square feet. And so
You've
that's
never
just,
been to ACL.
but
You got
typically
one
on a-
person for every square
but-
foot.
yes.
Ish.
But from a planning standpoint, those are some of the numbers that you would go with. The entire plaza itself is about an acre. That's 43,560 square feet, one person for every square foot. Just to divide by 10, that's about 4,300 people. If you say the entire plaza is a gathering space. The lawn itself looks to be about a third or a little bit, maybe 40% of all of that. So you could find yourself easily saying that if on a stand, if you had a nice packed event, you could get 1,500 people there pretty easily.
Okay.
That's kind of order of magnitude.
That's sort of the numbers that we've been seeing at some of
Yep.
our downtown events.
Right.
I think too, I would also note that this is still in the conceptual stage, as
Yeah.
Warren mentioned, and so there will be a range as we're still trying to right-size the stage and storage and things like that.
100%. Just trying to make sure that we're cognizant and we have answers for that
Yeah.
question in terms of what's our anticipated load, so that we know
Yeah.
from a planning perspective,
For
are
sure.
we building it too small?
Yeah.
Right? And just to be aware, have that number in our head. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good feedback, right? Because we could scale that up, or scale it down depending on the desired
The
capacity.
desired capacity, certainly. I think the last note there we'll get into with the rec center a little bit more is that we really are excited about the ways in which there are deliberate indoor-outdoor connections between the rec center and the plaza itself. So there is a turf feature, an indoor turf feature in the rec center, and one of the elements that you see sort of right in the middle of there, this turf area that's right adjacent to the building, you have these roll-up doors where you create a nice indoor-outdoor connection where the recreation and the turf can spill out. We also have a kind of unique indoor-outdoor connection with the slide and the natatorium itself, where the slide penetrates through the building, and so you're on the slide, and you're literally on the slide on the outside of the plaza itself. That, not to mention the thoughtful way in which the building articulation at the entrance is seamlessly woven into how the paving and the trailhead concepts are working at the foot of the plaza itself. So, and then
What's that,
Oh, please.
that blue thing behind the stage?
Future building.
Storage building.
It's just a
Storage.
future building. We don't have any idea what that building is.
Storage, isn't that storage?
Oh, a storage building.
The intent would be to have storage for the stage. Right now, it's rather large, so we're looking at what would we actually need to pull out for events onto the stage area. So that will be right size to fit that, but that's the intent there.
And I absolutely love that, because what question did I ask at every facility we went to?
Yeah, how much storage do we have?
much
Do you have enough?
Do you regret
Yeah.
not having enough storage?
That's right.
So beautiful, thank you.
And then then lastly, just as a reminder, the illustrate a full build out of downtown East. And we've thought through how the project can be planned so that, as the city's goals are, is to make a transition to densifying the project over time, making a transition to structured parking and continuing to attract mixed-use development along the other parcels that aren't built out. So we're quickly establishing the momentum, the sense of place, that they're there, that then starts to attract, additional development. And we all heard that they just, dropped interest rates. The Fed dropped a 50 basis point interest rate decline, and those are things that we start to say are positive for the future of speculative real estate development.
So, Kern, on the boxes that are red legend, so to speak, those are designated for or anticipated retail.
Yes, and I think the point is that illustrating some scenarios for what
Potential,
what amount of
okay,
retail,
yeah.
potential retail, how it could be laid out. But as we know, there's some elements there that are looked at to say this is very intentional, the placement of some of those parking structures, and then how the other development falls around it is just one illustration of how that could work, but there are others.
Okay.
I don't think anybody will be mad that you put pickleball courts there.
I got you. I think so. That's right. Okay, so we can move on to, this is again an illustration of some of the planning of the site itself, the different zoning that we established for the parcels, and how pedestrian promenades are generally working around Main Street, and development opportunities to the west of the Pfluger Tract as well, as a look at the development of the downtown itself. I think we'll pass it on to City Hall and Alex.
Good evening, everyone. So we wanted to first just take a bit of a step back. So whenever the design team is really focusing in on the design development phase, we take that step back, reintroduce ourselves to the governing concepts of the project, and we were really thinking about as an entire design team a space that's inviting, a space that is forward-facing to the community, a space that has various levels of activity throughout, and that refinement process started to make us kind of think: are there some opportunities for us to tighten the design in a few areas in particular? Maybe make a bit more of a deliberate entrance to the council chambers and give it the kind of gravity and presence with the project that we think the council chamber deserves. Looking at some refinements in the back of house, we call it back of house space, but more the business, where the city council business is actually happening. And then looking at some refinements in the lobby space. That started making us really reimagine how the council chamber engages with the space out in front. And if you're thinking about that idea of this plaza, or the front door to your home, welcoming people on that front porch is really the way that you can pull people in and give the city a different face in terms of how the city council is going to be engaging with the community. So we started thinking about what does a rounded approach to the council chambers present to us. Really have a space that not only preserves that entry as it's passing through from Main Street through, so that concept of being able to see through the lobby is still very much intact, but really look at a space where the community gathers in the council chambers that has multiple functions. And then you have that connection space with the cafe that's happening across that plaza. So you're really getting movement, both east, west, and north and south through that space, and gives a little bit more of a deliberate purpose to the way the council chamber is being presented to the city at large. So this really illustrates the idea of really embracing that spine, that plaza that's coming across from the central plaza across the street. You have that vein, that connection that's happening north-south that pulls you all the way through down to the trails on the south. And then I'll get back into in a little closer view of the council chamber in a moment, but really wanting the feel, the textures inside of the council chamber and lobby itself to feel modern, but not trendy. So bringing warmth in through texture, bringing warmth in through color, bringing warmth in through the tones that we use to light various elements, just to make sure that the space always has a warm feeling, and not necessarily a little bit too hard of a face.
And I was going to say, and not look institutional.
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. So you can tell in some of the shots that you're seeing here, some of our reference images, you're really starting to see some of those tones that'll really be carried through the entire project. So different areas might have a slightly different tone in terms of warmth, but it allows it to have different spaces to have a slightly different personality, but they're all inside of the same tapestry of material that you're talking about for council chambers. City council. Okay, there it goes. So just pointing out a couple of things that we saw as moments for us to really start to refine. The first was the dais. We understand that really being able to see each other as you're having conversations and talking about city business, that was of the utmost importance. But we thought that there's some sightline issues inside of the body of the space itself that could be refined with a new kind of reimagining of how we look at the council chambers itself. There's some of the refinements in the back of house space and how the council gets back to the room where you would be discussing council issues in private, and sometimes having some additional guests come in, thinking about the organization of that space as it relates to municipal functions. When the judge comes in and the different engagement points for how you access the space where the jury will actually convene in private and have conversations, as well as where the witness is going to be, I don't want to say commandeered, that's the wrong word, but where they would have an opportunity to speak to the witness in private. And you can see that you were really going to be walking in and then kind of turning twice to get to the actual relationship that we're thinking is really important in terms of where the mayor and where the judge and where the center of the dais really needs to be oriented. With a repositioning and a rethinking of how you're presenting the council chamber to the city, your doors are opening up. Your front door is being opened, or your side door is being opened, and you're inviting them directly into the council chambers. And then whenever council session begins, that door would close and everybody would access through that southern entrance. Now, in the event of a municipal function, people would file in through that main entrance, and then at the end of the session, they would step out to the south. You pay your fine or whatever is due, and then you walk yourself back out through the lobby. In the event of a jury screening and selection process, they would be able to sit in that lobby space and then enter in through that private entrance down at the south side. And what it does is allows for city function to happen, and then the IT component to happen outside of the actual council chamber itself, but still have the ability to view into that space. So there's quite a few adjustments, relatively minor in the grand scheme of things when you look at individual areas, but all of them working in concert together allows for a very rich and a very functional yet ordered processing of the space, whether it's a council chamber function or a municipal function.
I like the lines with the circular presentation. I'm reminded though of the Georgetown multi-purpose court and council chambers, and the press box / jury box was more perpendicular, so that they could see the defendants or the witnesses or whatnot, and then if you're press, you could see counsel if you're taking pictures or whatever. And so I wonder if with that facing more out, if those chairs need to make sure they have a good swivel on them so they can turn
Correct.
And they'd be sitting in those chairs probably at a 45-degree angle to what is shown there.
Now, this is still very early. Those
Sure,
are some of the
I was just pointing out
relationships.
things
No,
that you probably already considered. I'm sorry, sir.
No, absolutely. I'm happy that it is coming up because that is some of the refinement that we're looking at right now. How do we want people to be positioned in that space where you hold true to the concept of this round space, that gathering space that in a lot of ways the team has been talking to us about for so long, and we started there, then we kind of drifted, then we came back and we kind of drift. So it's always kind of coming back to these points about how can we make this as efficient as we can make it while still holding true to a beautiful concept.
Yeah, no, this is
in
beautiful.
terms of a community.
I see multiple entrances, and so what another concern was making sure that your witnesses have a different entrance than your defendants, because sometimes
Yes.
your defendants aren't always there of their own free will and need an
Yes.
area, a secure area. I see a lot of elements here that you've already considered and built in. I can't remember which city it was. They had a fixed podium as opposed to a rollaway podium, but it pivoted so that you could either face the dais or turn around and make a presentation.
That's an interesting one. What we've been looking at is how can you actually design something that actually, if it stays in the same position, it actually works from either direction.
Right, and it's hard because you have pockets on either side or drawers or whatever,
Yeah.
right, or a microphone. And this one I thought was a very innovative solution in terms of you pulled a pin, you rotate 180 degrees and it locked back.
Yeah.
Like one of those fancy ladders that you can articulate in any way you want.
Absolutely. It's the maximum flexibility is what we're trying to maintain for this space. We constantly come back every time we meet in this space. We kind of still walk around and take pictures and see how it's organized because there's going to be some similarities and some muscle memory in terms of the way you function now. And we want to build in the things that work well and then plan for new things that'll make your space so much better. So we're kind of in this constant refinement phase, which is exactly what design development is for. So we're pretty proud as a team of the collaboration that we've been having between all team members and the feedback and engagement with the city. It's been good. Like we were really happy to be able to share this.
And I don't know how, I'm sorry. I don't know how critical this will be. I think it would be important, but certainly keeping in mind any ADA requirements for people that are coming to court or the council chamber and how they would maneuver, throughout the area.
So, to that point, I can't point with the point
No,
right
it's fine.
now, but the seats down at the bottom of the ramp and the top of the ramp are all ADA accessible.
Okay.
We have ramps throughout that will take you from the low level, let's call it 0,
Yeah.
down to -1, and then back up
Okay,
to 0,
good.
so you can actually traverse through that entire space at ADA.
And I guess one of the other factors of that, because we've had some citizens come forward that were wheelchair bound and so forth, is consideration in the podium and however that would work.
Absolutely.
Sorry, David.
You can
Go
see
ahead.
actually right behind the jurors box, where you have the 6 jurors, you have a ramp right there on that side, and that's how they're able to ramp up. So you can have somebody who's challenged, either sitting as a witness, or they can actually be part of the jurors.
Sure.
I really like the openness of the chamber. It kind of reminds me of the Sugarland council chambers, which has that same kind of open, rounded feel to it. But I want to make sure that you have consulted with both with court staff and with the police about the security elements here. I wish it was still a time when we felt like we didn't have to address those things, but I want to make sure that that's part of our, unfortunately, part of our architectural planning.
It most certainly is. We've looked at the ballistic screening for certain times of, hopefully we never have to think about that or never have to address it, but we want to plan for it. We've also been having conversations with the city about where exactly security needs to be stationed, what doors need to be closed at what time, and make sure that we properly incorporate all the feedback that they're going to be giving to us. So we're in that process right now.
I'd like it to be as open to the public as possible, consistent with
Without.
safety for all of the participants.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention something about audio, video, because the capacity, I'm guessing, is around 180, 200 here.
211.
200, good guessing.
Now, are those seats fixed?
So you want to make sure,
They will be fixed, so,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
so we've got, for overflow crowds, we'll have AV opportunities in the large area out there.
That's correct.
So people, okay.
Well, I was gonna say, if they're fixed, then also on that point, where you have the jury tables, well, not jury tables, I'm sorry, the, prosecutor, and yes, could that come out where you could add more seats right there as well? If we needed more seats to, I see that this is set up for a jury or for court, but not too often we don't really need the seats.
Well, I'm
right
guessing those would also serve the same purpose that we have here tonight.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, are those fixed as well, the desks?
I think that's still open for conversation, just exploration, and
Okay.
does that need to be in an operable space, operable state, where you can slide out the space? So it's really just kind of a feature for us to continue to work through if we think that it needs to add more seats.
Okay, and then
Wait.
also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just one other point on that is we've also asked them to look at the flexibility of that space for things like joint meetings, and so that a joint meeting like the school board and the council, and that kind of at the same level would be an opportunity for that too, to know
That's right.
the flexibility of that furniture so it can move together and apart. Will also be we thought would also be important.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we have to add seats, then to Councilman McDonald's point, we need storage around there so that we could have those seats somewhere accessible. When Councilwoman Holliday and I went with you, Emily, to view some of these across in the DFW area, Frisco and everywhere. I think I can speak for both of us when I said we weren't happy with the really high Supreme Court arch type of seats that were really high for council. I mean, it's kind of like where you're looking down on people and everything. That's kind of like Buda,
Yeah.
you know. And they were so spaced so far out in Buda that, you know, like if I'm talking to you, you're way over there, and just
What?
yeah.
So
So-
to that point, when you walk in at the entrance on the east side, you're actually about level with the judge or the counsel. So you're looking at
Yeah.
people in their eyes, eye level, and then
Awesome.
it descends down about a foot. And we're still playing with exact
Oh, that's
number,
great,
but
yeah.
it descends down a foot, and then you're looking slightly up, but you're not looking down on people.
That's right.
So that was a note that we remembered from early on, that we
Okay.
we really didn't want to go in that direction of a higher kind of ring of seats.
Well, we're here because of the people. So.
Absolutely. And so we also started looking at, maybe some of the textures and some of the color. Do we have something that's a little deeper in tone, or do we have something that's a little brighter? So we're still kind of playing through some of those spaces and how we would articulate the interior of the space.
The middle image there you see with the wood is the concept of the door that Alex was referring to, that comes in directly into the space that really kind of pivots and then shuts, so it's not kind of your traditional double doors, but really is that welcome entrance into the chamber courtroom that can then be turned, and so then that also limits confusion kind of during the workday of the main entrance to City Hall is really that kind of center piece of the foyer, and that this is the feature when council or court is in session.
And the whole idea of the texture is, we're still, working through exactly what it looks like, but that solid, the solid face along that entrance. So the transparent space is the space that's open, the space that you constantly have the opportunity of going inside of. And when the solid face is open, that's when you're presented counsel, and then it closes when the session has started to kind of minimize disruption, and then it opens back up when you're releasing people back.
And lighting. Remember, was it Frisco we went to? The lighting was just horrible.
Yeah.
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 Just good lighting.
Yeah.
Frisco.
He's writing it down.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more spots
I like
than floods, right?
We like to take notes of.
It sounds like you
anything
want
that
more
you-
floods than spots.
It could be just good lighting, so it's not dim or somber or anything like that. I mean, like lighting in here is wonderful, so great, good for this. And so, yeah, that one was kind of. Remember, it was just, yeah, just like we were in a movie theater. I guess this is a theater. We are putting on
I mean,
shows.
Kind of, sort
It
of.
was a deal. That's right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. No, I don't think we'll be putting on any plays in this space. So I
that's
think they definitely have a multi-purpose, multi-use space
Yeah.
up there for sure.
Yeah. I think one of the things, I'm not sure where it was as well, like the acoustics are really important as well, especially since we're using microphones and things like that. I feel like an echo was happening, and that could be very distracting.
Is that the ridges, what you're talking about? Helps with the acoustics or no?
It does. What we're looking at is a panelized system that actually is designed to absorb sound, so you don't have that kind of reverberation, that distraction that you're talking about, where in longer spaces when you're talking and it's bouncing from one side to the next, it almost starts sitting on top of each other, the different sounds, so you can't hear the conversation when one or two, let's say, Caesar, you're having a conversation with Jim, you're making points, but it's layering on top of each other. That material and some of the material that we're looking at for the ceiling helps to minimize all of that, and then having AV have the opportunity to adjust wherever necessary. They can do that from behind the scenes without interrupting the room.
Well, I think it's important, as I'm looking at this, of course, there's all sorts of options, I'm sure, out there, is that we consider the psychology of the atmosphere in the council chambers, because that impacts people when they come into a room, how they feel. It might set them off or set them down or be a little more cooperative than they normally are,
Put them to sleep.
Put them to sleep. And I'm sure you're addressing that.
Chambers. Okay, great. I believe just one final note is just an update on some of the textures and images that we're really starting to capture. That are starting to capture the essence of the landscape tones for the space. I know much of this you all have seen before, so this is not necessarily new. It's more about it's being refined and blending into the development as we continue to make progress.
As we talk about interior design, I personally would like to see a lot of live plants for the greenery. That's our color too, and it just adds life. Real plants.
Real plants.
Real plants.
Exotic. Bird of paradise. No, I noticed that when they had that one plant in the previous slide. Yeah. That would be. Maybe
And then just touching.
Oh, I love it.
And then just touching briefly on the water feature.
I
now
love
that
that.
we're
There you go. You heard it. I was joking.
So now that we're kind
Positive
of
ion waterfall, in the background.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. There you go to your feelings, Mayor.
There you go.
Feeling good.
It should be calming.
That's right.
and so now that we're really kind of reimagining elements of the facade to embrace this new rounded facade, this rounded face, we're kind of looking at exactly where does the water feature want to sit so that it's in harmony with this revision of the plan or the revision of the idea. So we're still working through some of the
So-
I can see people taking a lot of photos there, and it kind of becoming a destination spot. Lover's Lane or something. I don't know. It's really pretty. And so just I think there's going to be traffic there to keep that in mind as well.
So one other aspect of that psychology, and I'm sure you've seen it or heard it or talked about it, or maybe you didn't, is, and I'm sure we'll have a state-of-the-art sound system, is that we can plug in some type of mellow music before the council starts.
Or Kenny G.
Do we all get headsets so I can hear David?
Well, I won't be around to hear that. Well, I may come to a city council meeting.
UN translator.
I believe that should be the,
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, the exterior
yeah, a couple of
elevations.
their exterior renderings
Fancy.
that kind of capture the spirit of the project
Wow.
and some of the tones and the textures.
So, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I noticed this on the other presentation in the plaza, and I know that once we plant a tree there, it'll probably take 15 years for it to grow, at least 15. So I would anticipate that we might consider fast-growing trees. I mean, oaks would be great, but that would take 25 years, so.
Just not a Bradford pear.
Yeah, not Bradford
It's gonna
pear.
fall over on itself.
Yeah.
In 8.
What other city staff offices located inside of City Hall?
Inside City Hall will be on the first floor, it's finance, IT, and our communications team. On the second floor is city manager's office, our records staff, city secretary's office, the EOC and staff break room, as well as our people and culture and professional standards. The third floor is anticipated as our growth floor, and so that's vacant currently. And the fourth floor will be our Parks and Recreation administration, leadership and event staff, as well as our planning and development services team.
Love it. Any rental space inside of the City Hall for the third floor, possibly, if people are wanting to maybe have a venue or something?
So the third floor, that's where we're anticipating leasing that to a tenant. The fifth floor will be a terrace, which could be used for events, as well as the cafe also has kind of a community space that connects to the building that could also be available for something like that as well.
Awesome.
We'll also get into the rec center here in just a second, which also has the event space on the third floor of that facility that would also be available for that type of use by others. Yeah.
What are we
so
looking
too.
at in terms of the materials being used on the exterior walls there? What are those and how are those, what other buildings are around here that use similar materials?
There's some harmony, I think, in some of the stones, but it's a stone base, a really local Austin stone, so that there's some harmony there, but depending on the way that we stack it, depending on the way that it's the module that we use, the dimension that we use, what we use, and the way we look at our joints, kind of starts to give it a little bit of an architectural direction. We're still playing with exactly what that is, but we know that we want it to be a really rooted, beautiful, natural stone with a fair amount of texture. The plaster is a very simple, clean, kind of a dove white is what I've been calling it. It's not really like a pure white, it's a warmer white. And then the metal elements or the darker elements is kind of a warmer wood. We're still playing with a little bit of the tones of exactly what it wants to look like, but it's meant to give you a feel, not necessarily be an exact replica of wood. But it from a distance, it'll give you the tonal qualities of a warmer wood look that we're looking for.
So what would be an example of a building in Pflugerville that has that kind of facade, that kind of
This is
material?
new.
I don't have one that I would say
I don't think
specifically
there is.
captures everything that comes to mind.
How about Austin?
I'm drawing a blank right now. I definitely can have some examples for you that will kind of help you identify exactly, kind of a feel. For
Why do you ask that question?
I'm just trying to see what it's gonna echo. At one point, we were talking about having this building sort of echo the buildings in Old Town. Doesn't seem like it's doing that, but I want to see what it is echoing.
We can find some examples and share those. We can get you some examples to share with those
Good.
materials.
Good, that'd be great. Thank you.
And I think the direction that many of us were going with is more of a future, a modern building, not necessarily clinging to the past, but showing the future of Pflugerville. So I don't think it's going to harken back to any of the Old Town, but there's not a whole lot of Old Town that is original. So it's a bit more, in my mind, rebirth.
Good point.
Yeah. New.
Pass pass it over to Bob to go through the rec
I'm
center.
excited about this.
Thank you. Good to see everyone again. I appreciate the opportunity to revisit the Recreation Center as we've been working through more and more details and more specifics of the building. So some of this will look very familiar from our previous times, and then some of it is a bit more advanced and refined from our last meeting. Overall floor plan here, this is, it's a little bit out of context. So imagine Main Street's at the bottom of the page, and so north is up, the Civic Plaza to your left, and then Dessau Lane all along the east side, the right side of your screen. Pretty much all the major elements that make up the rec center are still in play, still in place, and most of them all happen at this main first floor level. The lower right is that 10,000 square feet of retail that Corin mentioned a bit ago, and so it's kind of a blank slate right now. We don't know exactly what the tenant and layouts of that is, but we've been working through with how the service corridors work, how the utilities are available for any kinds of potential tenants, including restaurants that have a lot more demanding requirements in terms of services and so forth. Then above that, again, on the right side of your screen is the large gym, and it's a very large gym. There's 4 full UIL basketball competition courts and middle school scale basketball courts as well. Then the volleyball courts are superimposed over that, and then the pickleball courts are all superimposed over that with different game striping that'll make each of those sports very clear. All around the perimeter is a jogging or a running track that's actually up a level, but you can see the pattern of it not only around the entire gym, but crossing over. There's a bridge, if you will, that crosses over the gym that affords options on how you might be running or jogging or just walking throughout the space. Much of the storage areas are happening way at the north end at the top of your screen. We're trying to maximize the storage there as much as we can. Pickleball nets take up a lot of space. They don't weigh a lot, but they take up a lot of room sometimes. And so we're trying to work through exactly how that works and convenient-wise. Much of the athletic equipment drops down from the ceiling. The basketball goals, the volleyball goals, divider nets, all of these things will be suspended in the space and be available pretty much at the touch of a button. Then on the left side of your screen, lower left is the main entry to the building, and that's a very important orientation. Not only is it oriented back and relationally and visibly with the City Hall that Alex just walked you through, but it also is the very corner of the Civic Plaza. So that's the main entry point. You'll notice that the entry doors are pulled back. You'll see when I go to the next level, so there's a deep kind of a recessed entry that's covered overhead so that there's protection from sun, protection from rain. We know there'll be a lot of people in and out of the building. I'm sure since the parking is somewhat remote, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to drop off, pick up, for me to wait for a ride after a class or after a practice session or swim meet or something like that. So that main entry off that lower left-hand corner is very important. We're trying to pick up on the design threads of a trailhead and make it have a lot of a feel that's very natural. So you'll notice the main concourse that weaves its way through the building is a bit more random. It's a bit more of a wandering type path through the building. And it has a very natural feel. There'll be a lot of warm materials. There's a lot of greenery, a lot of planting opportunities all along that trail. Immediately at the entry door is the admin area. All the check-in happens right there at a control point there at the front door, and as well as just the admin happens on the left-hand side is you would be coming in those entry doors, and then on the right-hand side is a lot of the support spaces for entry. There's a seniors lounge with very comfortable seating where you might meet up with friends, watch a football game or something like that. There's a concession area, a vending area. There's public restrooms right there, very, very convenient. Then across at the admin area, there's also some informal seating. There's a very large check-in desk, and a lot of the administration backs up to that supports the entire facility. There's a children's care area as well as an indoor playground area just to the left that also orients out towards the Civic Plaza itself. There's also a set of restrooms that are directly available from the City Plaza. You don't even have to go into the rec center to avail yourself of some restrooms that will support activities going on a daily basis in the plaza itself. In addition to the gym, there's two other major sports areas or activity areas, if you will. You'll notice in the middle of your screen on the left-hand side is a large indoor turf area. So it'll be a artificial playing type turf that can host all forms of practices and fitness activities that would go on there. There's actually a ramp and a stepped access from that lower level turf area up to the next level. I'll show you in a minute. That is the actual fitness level where a lot of the aerobic and fitness machines happen. So there's a direct interaction for the activities going on the turf area itself. From that meandering concourse, they'll be very readily visible into that turf area. So you'll be able to enjoy watching a flag football game going on or a soccer practice or something like that if a parent wants to watch the activities that are going on in that area. Just above the turf area is the core support areas of the locker rooms. There's a variety of different individual and group locker rooms, as well as some sauna and other support areas that are central to the turf, central to the gym, and then ultimately central to the aquatics sports area that happens just above that in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. So you'll come in, change for swimming, and just be able to circulate directly out to the aquatics pool area from the
Are there family dressing rooms?
There's family as well as individual restrooms, yes. So the dad there with daughters, it's all very, very family friendly throughout. The aquatics area is efficient as we can make it. There's a lot of different activities. There's a kind of a zero-age pool for the youngsters. There's some swimming lanes for those who want a more active swimming role. There's a lazy river kind of flowing circuit that you can enjoy walking, resistance walking against the flow. Corin already mentioned that there's an outdoor water slide that makes its way out the building, makes a few loops in the Civic Plaza area, and then lands right back into the pool area. So it adds a lot of visual interest and activity. One of the options that we're hoping to afford in our budgets as well, in addition to the water slide, is a stand-up slide. It's similar, but not exactly the same, and it all happens within the pool area. It is basically you stand up in a water flow type area and make the circuits, and again it lands right there along the north edge of the pool. It's a unique feature. It's one that Shane is really keen on, and really we're really pressing to see that we can make it into the budget. There's 2 party rooms that can work either separately or together, so that birthday parties and special events parties that have an aquatics feature to them can take place there as well.
Where are they?
If you're in the pool area, if you see the upper upper right-hand corner are those party rooms. They're accessible from that concourse area and then directly out to the pool area.
Talking about in the gray?
Yes, in the green.
Those are yellow, I think.
Yellow.
It's
Yeah.
that yellow
Yeah.
corner there.
With the
Oh, right there?
squares.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
Are there any areas that you'll find designated specifically for our senior saints? There was a lot of conversation around that, and we also talked about everybody being together. But are any areas where you think that they would congregate together?
There are. There's a lot of deck areas outside the pool. We've tried to not eat up all the deck areas with the aquatics. So there's a lot of places where there'll be chairs and groupings of chairs. That lazy river circuit has a big sweeping zone that you can sit, and there's water jets, right on the sore spot of your back that you've been working on. So that'll be a very popular congregating area as well. There's a hot tub area that's associated with it. So there's a variety of features that I think will be really popular with not only the younger users, but the older users as well. Just above the pool area is a lot of the support. There's a lot of water systems that go into making that pool work, and so that's all located along the north side. There's a place for the lifeguards to have their own areas and locker rooms themselves. Much of the servicing of that equipment, the chemicals and things that will come in off of the north end of the building, so that the top side end of the building is much more of a service oriented, although the public can come in and be buzzed through the doors at the north end, and so that the concourse, meandering concourse I talked about, ends up there at the north end, and there will be a lot of surface parking just across the street. And we'll potentially make use of that. There's bus parking, a lot of that loading zone area that happens for the pool equipment, all can happen along the street on the north side of the building.
And Bob, let me ask you real quick. I know earlier you mentioned, excuse me, that we had restroom accessibility from the plaza into, the restroom area. So is that as far as somebody from the outside can get into the center?
It's direct access from the plaza.
Okay.
You don't have to enter the rec center in order
So it's
to.
just outdoors.
It is. It's like, it could be after hours, it's a late night concert. You're closed down the rec center, so you could still use the restrooms but not gain access to the rec center. Now, there are a large set of restrooms in that foyer area for normal use, but.
At one point, I was contemplated putting the restrooms as part of that building that was kind of behind the stage, kind of like, but then we were like, we already have plumbing and everything in the rec center. It makes sense just to leverage that there, to provide that service.
It may make sense to have both at some point. It's large activities going on.
Okay, got it.
Bob, one of the buildings that we toured had two entrances like this. The back entrance was located strategically next to a big workout area, so people could come in through that entrance, work out and leave, right? And they weren't interested in all the other amenities. The two issues that I remember with that, one was there wasn't a desk. There's a front desk, there wasn't a rear desk for a station there. And the other issue was that if you came in to work out with your child, you still had to traverse the entire place to find the children's area to leave your kid and then go back to work out.
Yeah.
Have you looked at those or thought about those or addressed those in some way?
We certainly have, and we've talked about how that back door is used. You notice that there's actually a sight line from the front desk all the way down that whole meandering concourse to the back door. So we wanted to maintain a control and a security access to that. And so we haven't totally talked about all the fine points of what periods of the day that back door might be open and what periods of the day maybe you might have to be buzzed in or something like that. Certainly employees could swipe card and gain access anytime during that process.
So I think our goal really for that would be there is the bus loading zone for if it was camps or schools wanted to use the rec center, that they could come in with staff on that side. The main entrance and the control point is that front or the side Bob talked to next to the plaza. That the northern entrance is really it's really for the larger groups where it's more controlled. We don't plan, that's not a staffed, it would be emergency exit or for large groups that are being hosted by a staff person.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Let's go up to the mezzanine level. Let's see, I've got the button here. So now we're at the second floor. There were several large open stairs as part of that concourse, and you come up and land, and there's a large kind of a landing area just outside the fitness. So almost everything you see in the bottom right corner are the fitness area. So this area will be just completely filled with different zones of different type of aerobic and free weights and weight machines, treadmills, spinning class, all types of aerobic machines that happen there in that large fitness area. There's also in the very bottom left two fitness rooms, if you will, so that if there's a particular class or a particular demonstration or grouping, that there's also a place to go inside, and if you've got your own sound system or your own music, it's a separate from the fitness area itself. A lot of glass all the way around the corner, so that if I'm slogging away on the treadmill, I can look out on the main street, I can look out on the Civic Plaza and really enjoy the context, not just being in a room somewhere. There's a turf area even at this second floor. So you can see just above the main fitness area is an indoor turf area. So that'll be a lot of agility classes or special trainer classes that can go on there. And there's where you see both the steps and the ramps that can go down into that turf area. So a lot of easy interaction between the fitness level and the large group areas.
We could pause on that for a second. That was one of the most innovative pieces that we saw in the design. It was just basically a 2-level turf area is what they're describing, in a custom turf ramp that connects the bottom floor turf that Bob was discussing and that second floor turf as well. So it's a very exciting piece of the project, really innovative.
And a lot of good stories below. You've got all kind of fitness things. They're right there at the turf storage that works really well, conveniently. So this is the level where the 3-lane track, you can see, makes its circuit all around the gym as well as across the gym at the 50-yard line, if you will. There are, it's mostly all flat, but there are opportunities to do some adventure track as well. So along the east side and the north side, let's call it a figure 8, there's a chance for a ramp down and then a ramp back up. So if you want the challenge of jogging or running or even walking to add a new aspect of it, you can enjoy that. And then on the north side, there's a chance you can go down steps and come back up steps. So again, it adds variety, but you're not obligated to do that. If I just want to stay on a nice level track, I've got the option to do that as well.
What's the distance on the track?
Oh, God, I used to know that.
Kilometers.
I'll have to get back to you. I remember the question being asked before. I'll have to circle back with you on that. Very, very top of the figure 8, you'll notice there's also a little additional fitness areas. If I've got a personal trainer, if a trainer has a couple of clients and they just want to do some focused activities, but be not a distraction to the rest of the building, there's some little isolated fitness areas that have nice big views to the north as well. So there's still a lot of glass that's happening. One of the major challenges that we've been working on is not just building this gym inside of a blind box, that really enjoying a lot of natural light and a lot of connection to the outdoors. So we've been, and I'll show you some extra elevations in a minute. We'll talk a bit more about that. But currently, there's a lot of glass along the east side. There's a lot of glass on the north side in areas where we don't have a lot of harsh south and west light that's very difficult to maintain and control, but where we can actually make sure we're controlling glare and lighting as well. There's a third level. Again, those open stairs go up a third level. There's a double elevator as well that lands on the third level. And the entire third level, for the most part, happens down in the lower left-hand corner. As you can see, there's where the stair lands, there's a pretty large, generous pre-function area or receiving area, a lobby type area. And then there's the large event room with nice views to the west and to the Civic Plaza beyond. There's a big operable partition, so if you had a smaller groups, you could partition that off and have their own separate entries to that. There's a catering kitchen area, so you could have a large event catered out of that catering kitchen, and large storage areas as well. So if you're switching from audience type seating to table and chair type seating, a lot of easy storage that works well with that. We've talked about having a stage that it could be operable, it could be movable, so you could set the room up in a variety of configurations depending on what kind of presentation, banquet, reception type events that you're having. If you needed or wanted a stage area that would support that as well. And then across the concourse or the pre-function area, there's 2 large classrooms there as well. That one of them is more of a, we call it a wet orientation, that it has the potential to be a teaching kitchen, or maybe more of a messy art room type setting, so you could have a variety of classes there. In other words, there's cleanable surfaces, there's water, there's floor drains, there's all that you need to keep an activity like that going. And then there's a second, a bit smaller classroom that works with that for just any kind of multipurpose presentation or teaching demonstration that might go on. You'll see there's a storage space that is housed between the two that make for easy deployment of different types of seating or equipment for whatever class is going on. And then an area that we have really focused on a lot in the very lower left-hand corner is an outdoor patio. So you can step out of the pre-function area, you can step directly out of the larger event room and to an open patio area that not only looks out onto Main Street, but looks out onto the Civic Plaza as well. You can see we've even shifted it at a bit of an angle just to make the viewing back towards the plaza a little bit more convenient. If there's a concert going on the stage, then you can take views to that as well. Restrooms, elevators, all at this 3rd floor level.
One feature that I found beneficial, on the southernmost edge, it looks like you have 2 classrooms there. In the storage area, it looks like you have a room divider bisecting that room. Not having that there allows you to pull equipment out to either room and not have to have 2 sets of it.
Yeah. We certainly could do that. Yep.
Just a thought.
Yep. This is a slide that you've mostly seen before. Just the palette of materials is still pretty much the same. We're using a lot of stone that is not a lot different than Alex is deploying at the City Hall. We also have some brick mixed in, particularly along Main Street, where there's more of a storefront type feel going on. On some of our bigger areas, we have a series of composite metal panels that have a variety of kind of muted tone colors that are part of how do we deal with these really enormous wall surfaces that make up the various gym, pool, and turf areas themselves. And we've tried to mix in a lot of warmth with some of the wood materials in the soffit areas, in the patio areas. You'll see some elements of that.
On that note, though, I would hope that the rec center and the city hall complement each other.
Yes.
I mean, that's very important. I mean, I don't want somebody to stand in the middle of the street and look at both of them and say, what in the world happened here?
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree, I do want to do that. I think, Mayor, you said it earlier, you don't want it to be institutional. Right? So I don't want them to be identical. I don't want it to look like two.
I agree.
I
just want them to get someone.
Complement's probably a good word,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think a different material, different shades, but something that at least gels together. Right?
I agree.
Yeah.
So where there's stone, there's very much a similarity. Where there's storefront glazing and windows, it's very much going to be the same color and type of framing and so forth. So I think you'll see a lot of similarities, even though the functions are vastly different between the two buildings. So this is more of the drone view of the overall. You won't often have a chance to see the building like this, but it gives you a chance to see how all these various spaces are expressed in a variety of parapet heights and roof heights, and we wanted the exterior of the building to be pretty obvious and intuitive of where these various large activity spaces are inside the building.
Are those cisterns there just for art, or are you planning on putting?
Let me try to go back here.
It's an option.
It's one of our options to, let's see. Well, I'm not having,
Hang on one second, Crystal
That's
catches
okay.
up.
yeah,
Got it.
here we go.
There, whoop, there. Right there.
So we'd like to do as much rainwater collection as we can off the roof. It's an option on the budget right now. We're going to carry it through and see how our pricing goes for that. Corin mentioned how the turf area extends out to the plaza. You can see the turf area so that a class could move outside and enjoy the outdoors. The recess between the pool and the turf areas is a great chance to do a wall mural. It'd be a great photo opportunity where you see those water collection places are. And all of that is a bit raised up and pretty prime viewing area to whatever kind of events are going on the plaza.
Emily, is that mural space also the space that we talked about potentially making a projection screen?
Yes, it is. But we talked with our parks team, and typically what they would do would bring out an inflatable screener so that we could do both the mural and the movies on that wall if we need to.
That might be easier to manage without having to worry about where the projector would be
That's right.
placed and have a drone floating with the projector.
Yeah.
This is a view from Dessau and C Street, looking back towards the gym. We've shown you several different methods of expressing this track that's going around the building. We felt like it was a great opportunity to take this really, really large gym space and give it some interest and break up the massing of it. So we're still expressing that track along this edge. Fortunately, this is more eastern glass, so we have the chance to filter the glass, the sunlight into the room with a variety of techniques that we're looking at with the glass itself, as well as some mesh shading elements. It looks like it's tilted up at a bit of an angle because it is. It's going to follow the pitch of the track indoors, so it has that kind of whimsy that we think will work well with the overall view from
Something to consider, just to consider off of Dessau right there. Possibly something artistic that will serve as also bollards. I can't even say it. Bollards, yeah, protect the pedestrians right there.
Pedestrians, yeah. Do we have I don't know how long that landscape gap is, but yeah, how do we make sure that the sidewalk's well protected with the high speeds on 685?
On the busy street.
Yeah.
It looks like there's parking.
Now I've got one other question. Obviously, there's a lot of windows, a lot of light, which is really exciting. I remember someone telling me that a bowling alley is a bar with a really expensive air conditioning bill. And I'm worried here. What are all those windows going to do? What's our maintenance expense going to be on keeping this thing, keeping the people inside there comfortable?
Well, like I said, fortunately, it's not south or west facing glass, so that it's got a lot of direct sun on it. It's more of an easterly direction. We're also using some shading elements inside as well. If you noticed when I showed you the roof view, there's a series of skylights. So we're doing a lot of natural lighting in the room itself that helps balance the overall lighting inside, so there's not a glary side of the pickleball court and a non-glary side of the pickleball court.
Are we using, I don't know, energy efficient windows and
Absolutely.
things like that to make sure that we're not losing our shirt on the electric bill?
Not only are we insulating the walls and the cavity of those panels, but most of of the perimeter walls of the building are a tilt wall type construction. So we've got 9 inches of concrete that is very durable and it really takes great advantage of the thermal lag time between, the fluctuation of temperatures during the day and night. A bit more of a nighttime shot, and again, like you mentioned, the adding lighting along this edge so that there's a degree of safety and security felt along. These are the most less active sides of the building as opposed to the plaza side and the Main Street side. This is a view from Main Street. The retail area is just off the screen to your right. And then this is the upper level are those classrooms that face out to Main Street at the 3rd level. The middle level is the fitness area. And so behind those windows would be those specialty fitness classes that we looked at. And then over on the far left is the bigger fitness area. So there would be all kinds of aerobic machines and so forth. That deep recessed entry I mentioned to you earlier is on the very far left at the lower level. So you can see there's a deep overhang there. You're out of the rain, you're out of the sun if you're waiting for a ride to pick up or if you're dropping someone off and so forth. And we tried to keep as much glass and transparency along this side as we could so that there's a good balance with the retail area that obviously will likewise have a lot of openness and transparency. And then you see the patio off the very top level on the left-hand side.
And Emily, I would hope that we don't call it the PF Rec Center.
That's right. We'll have a creative name for the rec center.
This is just a holding spot. Just a holding spot.
Oh, yeah.
These are just a few shots from the plaza area. We've looked at a number of designs for that roof, including wood glue laminated beams and as well as a variety of skylight opportunities. We're still working on that, working on our budgets for that. On the left-hand side, you see those large windows. Those are from that big activity room that we talked about. And then the middle level is all those fitness rooms that all look out toward the plaza. This is looking back from the northwest corner. So this is the pool area. You see the water slide jumping out of the building, making its loops and then landing back in the building. And then the lower level forms that you see are a lot of the support areas and pump rooms and so forth for the pool. We don't need a lot of windows for that, so that maybe this is a good place to do some mural work and add some good interest to the north side of the building. And then you see that the north entrance there off to the left side of the screen where it might be, as Emily was describing, staff entrances, bus loading and unloading and so forth. There's the large gym on your right. You can see the retail area on your left. Maybe if there's a restaurant tenant, there's a great opportunity for some outdoor patio dining type areas that happen off this corner. We've been working pretty carefully on how the service corridor works that supports the back sides of the retail area. And there's a lot of trash that comes in and goods and services trash that comes out and goods and services that comes in. There's some grease traps and transformers and things like that all to deal with along this edge as well.
And then the last thing we wanted to touch on is the Gin Tract. As you know, the Gin Tract was purchased last year, and the southern portion there that's labeled as Parcel C, that will be the future parking lot. There's some balance of that land that we'll see. We put a building or other that we retained after our partnership with First United Methodist Church. On the north side, there is about approximately an acre, which is labeled there as Parcel B. We have sought out through an RFQ a potential developer for that parcel. Those are being evaluated by staff currently. We anticipate bringing forward to you a potential developer for that, similar to what we've been through with Corin, though much smaller, is to kind of work through negotiations with that developer to bring a creative use on that parcel as well. Then we just wanted to kind of wrap up with what's coming up. We are still working on various elements of the entitlement process, as Corin alluded to when we started discussion related to the construction plan approval for all of the infrastructure. We are seeking TxDOT approvals. We are working on an advanced funding agreement, which requires a resolution, which, should we hear back from TxDOT this week, we'll have on your October 8th agenda. We'll then seek site development permits for both the rec center as well as City Hall, building permits, and then we'll continue, as we indicated, with plaza design and permitting. We're also beginning our branding efforts. That'll be in conjunction with our communications team, as well as Corin and the retail team that he's put together for that, so that it's a holistic approach to not only the downtown east and the extension of Main Street that you saw today, but also being mindful that we're thinking about the core of downtown and how the entire area functions, and that becomes known as downtown Pflugerville, as we know that that's one of the goals in the extension of Main Street to this particular property. There are also some additional agreements working through into ground leases and other agreements that we're working on with Griffin Swinnerton. We anticipate having an executive session with you all at the next meeting in order to bring forward to you all by the end of October, I think it's your 22nd meeting, the next phases of those agreements. We do anticipate we are on track for groundbreaking in December, and we hope in the next week or so to be able to announce that date to you all.
I was looking on my calendar and I noticed there was a certain date available.
There is a certain date available. That is, we are on track for that, and we hope to be able to announce that next week.
All right, Emily, I did have one question, maybe a complicated question. One of the very early slides, we saw the overall
Yes.
outline of the property, and one thing I didn't notice, and probably because it's just a very pretty mock-up, I didn't notice any A-cell or D-cell lanes to turn in either on Main Street or on is it Avenue C, some of those other streets. I'm assuming we will have A-cell and D-cell lanes.
Yes, we are working on those with our infrastructure improvements to 685 with TxDOT.
And I imagine we're also talking about intersection improvements there at Pecan. I think there was a potential, flyover or maybe overpass, underpass. Just want to make sure we're all that's integrated into the planning for the accessibility and the continuity within the project.
Certainly. So part of the infrastructure conversation is kind of that phase one approach, is to kind of looking at that extension of Main Street and its intersection with 685. Kimberly Horn, our design team for 685 improvements, which includes the Pecan and 685 long-term improvements, have been helping us with kind of how we look at that corridor long-term. That phase one does not include improvements at Pecan and 685, but we are mindful of tying both that CIP project to this project long-term, so that we're including right-of-way and other needs that might be needed as the project progresses along 685.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, if there's no other questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Our next item is a discussion regarding policy and procedures for naming city property.
Good evening,
Okay.
Mayor.
Hey, Brianna, how are you?
Mayor Pro Tem Weiss, Deputy City Manager Hartshorn, and Council. I'm excited to be here tonight. Brianna Higgins, Special Project Manager for the City Manager's Office, with Emily Brown, Assistant City Manager. Tonight before you, we have policy and procedures for naming city property. Attached to this agenda item is a draft naming policy. We're just going to go over this at a high overview and then get some feedback from you all. The intent of this policy is to outline what our next steps would be as we grow as a city and we build more facilities and roads and parks, how we might want to name those facilities and parks and have some criteria for that. It also addresses renaming in the instance that we receive any renaming requests. Although we don't anticipate those, we know that one day it'll happen and we want to be prepared for that. I also think this policy came about to prevent me from naming things after Taylor Swift, but that's just a rumor. As we get started, we'll go through some definitions. Throughout the policy, you'll see these phrases: city facility, public parklands, public streets. I'll start off with city facility. It might seem pretty obvious, but this way we're all on the same page. Those are buildings or structures that are controlled by the city and have access to the public or serve the public in some instance. Within this definition is also a sub-facility. A sub-facility includes, it's just a great way to kind of answer all of these ways of addressing a conference room or a meeting room or something like a municipal court. We refer to that as a sub-facility. That way it's one simple word, and I'm not constantly going conference room, meeting room. Public parklands are developed or undeveloped parklands, open spaces, sports complexes, pools, and trails. A recreation center would fall under facility, not under public parkland. We also have public streets, and these are any city-owned, maintained streets, roadways, probably the obvious and easiest definition. Within the policy, we have naming authority, and so for city council, if the proposed name is to be named after an individual, entity, or corporation, that would fall under council to approve, and we'll go over kind of what that looks like and what the criteria is for that. And then the renaming of a city facility. So if a facility already exists, or a road already exists, or a parkland already exists, and we're asked to rename it, that would come to council to approve. Administratively approved, and I want to take a moment to say that anything that goes through the development process for the first time, that will continue to go through the development process and follow those rules. That's separate from this naming policy. These are those special instances. So city facilities, including sub-facilities, conference rooms, things like that, public parklands, public streets would be administratively approved. But at any moment, the city manager can bring that to council for council approval. So some exceptions. So this policy will not apply to descriptive names such as municipal court. It'll also include any miscellaneous descriptions. So if it's park, that's not something that necessarily needs to be approved, right? Or avenue or way. Naming of public streets in the subdivision development process, I already mentioned that once, but unless the proposed name is to be named after an individual, and I'll touch on that in just a second. And then temporary names of city property in the planning and project development process. So just placeholder names. Criteria. So if we are going to name something, this is the criteria that's outlined to ensure that we kind of have the same lens as we look at what names should be. References to the geologic or geographical, cultural, historical, botanical. Some examples would be like Gilliland Creek, or Gilliland Park is named after Gilliland Creek. Those kinds of examples. Branding efforts that strengthen our image as a city, an identity or character. If there is a significant monetary grant, donation, or some type of bequest to the city towards the acquisition of the city property, that would be considered, but doesn't mean it has to happen. And then naming after an individual should occur in memoriam. And there's some additional criteria listed within the policy that kind of outlines what that looks like.
Let's talk about that. I know that our friends at the ISD do not have that policy in place. Their most senior member of the board has a school named after her. I'd see that as a good general rule. Obviously, you can name a building or a school after somebody, and then 3 years later they're P. Diddy.
Did you say P. Diddy?
But I'm wondering if we want to make that a general rule, but that would be something that city council could waive. For instance, if we had a long-time city employee who retired, and we wanted to name a room after that person, or something like that, do we want to have this requirement or not? Gentlemen, ladies, thoughts?
Would this be in our charter, or is just something
No,
we're
it's
just
not
going
a
to follow up?
It's just within the policy.
Well, then we always have the ability to supersede, or the council at any time would always have the ability to supersede it,
We're
correct?
trying to set a standard
Oh, yeah.
for future councils to let them know, hey, this is what we expected, this is what we planned for. I think there are some times where, you know, it may be very appropriate to name something after a living person. I'll go, and I always have to preface this with no relation, but there's a high school that bears a name of a family in town. Many members of that family obviously still living, but it's still in honor of the family, past, I suppose, present, and future. I like the idea of establishing that it's in memorandum. I know earlier we talked about Frisco City Hall, and that was actually a building that was named in honor of the city manager who still had to go to work there for the next 10 years, walking into a building that was named after him. I don't know if that made him comfortable or uncomfortable, but it's certainly a heavy burden. Yeah, it's tough for me because I can think there are some people who I wouldn't mind naming some facilities after, but they're still alive, and I want to make sure that we remember them when we're here remembering them. But
On the other
also,
hand,
it can get a little tricky naming it after someone who's still alive.
But it would be nice to name some facility after somebody while they're still alive, and they can have a chance to come to the naming ceremony. And you know, I see it as a unusual case, but something that certainly we might want to, you know, name a council chamber after a distinguished, long-serving individual, for instance. That might be appropriate and would be outside of the criteria that we have in place right here.
I think there's and I'm not a legal person, but I think there's a different definition for requirement versus criteria.
And that's what I was trying to get at earlier. Council always has the ability to override.
Two slides before it said it was a name. It was going to be
Why
named
write it
after
down
a
if
person
we're
that would
gonna
come
override it?
before council anyway. So that would be a criteria that we can evaluate and maybe waive, depending on the circumstances. Does that sound?
I'd just like to make sure that we make it clear that this is a general policy. It seems like a good general policy to not name things after people while they're alive, because people do things or things people that things come to life.
I mean, in the works. I mean,
Sure.
I personally, it could go either way. But let's say you named a city hall after a certain person, and then he became a felon and ended up in prison. That's probably not a good image for the city.
Yeah, and then
That goes back to
we might want to rename it.
They would rename it, right?
We have a renaming policy already.
Yeah, and I would think we would want to be very careful if we're naming anything after a living person.
Right.
Although
that's a little extreme, but obviously
it does happen. It does happen.
Elected officials should serve with integrity.
But every once in a while, they end up in the slammer.
Only in Illinois.
Well, mostly in Illinois. But it happens in Louisiana, too.
Oh, let me ask you real quick, because I thought about this earlier before I forget. So we had in,
criteria? If so, within the policy, we refer to a committee, but it's a subcommittee of council. Most likely the facility subcommittee would review that request as well to provide a recommendation to council. Again, if it's applicable, the council would see that request and then make a determination whether they agree with that renaming or not. There are some additional steps for renaming streets that would occur. An individual that's requesting to rename a street would go through a little bit more of a rigorous process. There'd be a public hearing. It would occur here at the city council meeting, and the individual that's requesting the renaming of a street would have the burden of all the costs associated with renaming said street. So our next steps would be to provide this policy at the October 8th council meeting for approval with the suggested change of should. If there are any other feedback that council has, we're happy to take that now or at another time.
Well, I think it's a good start to begin considering naming and renaming policies and procedures, because we've grown to that point where we can do that. You know, when I said don't call it the PF Rec Center, I mean, you know, there's a more appropriate name for it, certainly without having to name it, but, you know,
Yes, sir.
we just need to be careful about that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would just add, and we may have already taken care of this with the direction we've already provided, but I always worry about, I'm going to call it the loopholes. There's a street that runs into a park nearby that is not named after someone, but it's awfully close to that because the organization had a rule that they couldn't name it after a living person, so they made it sound like that. Yes. So I want to make sure, you know, maybe now, hey, we can name it after a living person, so it's not a big problem. But I don't want people to just try to find a way around it either.
Okay.
So
The Doug Vice.
All right. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Our next item is to conduct a presentation of the People and Culture Department.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Robbie Craig. I'm the People and Culture Director. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight some of the accomplishments of our department in fiscal year 2024. This is my third time to share the work of our department with you, and every year it is a very rewarding experience to describe what this team has been able to do with your support and the support of our city manager's office. I'm so proud to be a leader here. I very much appreciate your trust that allowed us to grow our team last November and again in July. I'd like to introduce you to the members of our team. Sheena Hannon is our new Assistant Director, and returning from last year, we have Kevin Connaughton, Luis Carmona, who joined us in November, Ayla O'Dwyer, Diego Heron, Belinda Pena, and Lori Alvarado, who joined us last month. I would also like to recognize Kelly Bagdon, who contributed to the successes of P+C and is now sharing her talents in our Public Works Services group. Our purpose in the People and Culture Department is to foster an inclusive and thriving workplace where every employee feels valued and supported. We are committed to promoting a culture of the city's first core values every day. We want to be the city that other cities compare themselves to and where people want to come to work. As Serena mentioned in the first budget presentation, 40% of the FY25 budget is our people. By investing in them, we recognize it is our job to inspire excellence, cultivate strong relationships, and ensure that our values are reflected in employees so they may create the best quality of life for our residents. This includes recruiting and hiring diverse people who exhibit our first core values, analyzing our benefits and our compensation to create the most attractive package for employees, seeking training opportunities and development for our staff, supporting our staff and managers in all aspects of their employment, reviewing policy frequently and adjusting for what is needed to make our organization function at its best. We provide support to our Pflugerville employee-led committees and promoting career advancement for our staff. As of today, we are 439 full-time employees and 28 part-time. We onboarded 105 new employees this year. Our fun camps and aquatics programs were fully staffed with 178 seasonal employees. We expanded our opportunities for high school and college students, hosting 18 interns through the Texas Works, Home to Texas, and Travis County Summer Youth Employment Programs. Some of them we refused to let go, like Cameron from our CMO office, Brittany Moreno in Communications, and Ian from PAWS, who are back again for this fall. Our voluntary turnover and vacancy rates remain low compared to national, state, and local averages. We've maintained our We Hire Vets designation, with 13% of our employees reporting themselves as veterans. We're very proud that our 57% of our seasonal employees returned, despite a lot of competition in the surrounding areas. So that's 101 seasonal employees. And we attribute this to our competitive compensation, our longevity bonuses for those who make it through the season, and a culture of valuing and embracing these employees within a team environment.
The We Hire Vets designation, the minimum criteria for that is 10%, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we recertify that every year. To borrow from our Texas Longhorns coach, Steve Sarkeesian, we're building our own 5-star culture here in Pflugerville. As the city and this department grows, we continue to expand on previous initiatives and add new ones. We had 96 employees participate in our Pflugerville family tour this year, so that means in total we've taken 256, which is more than half of our current full-time staff. Over 250 employees attended our second wellness fair for preventative screenings, access to preventative benefit providers, and interactive demonstrations such as Zumba and Jiu-Jitsu. We are energized by bringing our employees together in person through monthly volunteer service, employee appreciation, and connection events. We prioritize our employees' well-being by eliminating excuses to avoid preventative health care through our wellness leave and our on-site events. After this community lost one of their beloved pit masters too soon, we searched and partnered with Lifeline to provide cardiovascular and stroke screenings for 57 of our employees. And they'll be back in the fall to screen up to 60 more employees on site. So we're very excited about that program. And in addition to our large wellness fair, the department hosted multiple on-site events to promote physical, mental, and financial well-being for our employees. Through the Tyler Munis ERP and NeoGov implementations, P+C continues to develop and improve our personnel-related processes. This year, extensive time was spent testing with pilot groups and training employees and managers on various functions in the Tyler Munis ERP. We completed a thorough review of all policies and the first comprehensive update to the employee handbook since 2021. And this project included adding all supplemental policies into one place, and all employees were required to review and acknowledge the handbook, and P+C will conduct live training for employees in October. Leadership and P+C collaborated to create a student loan repayment assistance program for hard-to-fill project manager and engineering positions. And we also implemented dispatcher hiring bonuses, and I'm happy to report that all vacancies are filled for the first time in several years in our dispatch group.
So as the student loan program, would you consider that an example of creative recruiting?
I do. It came out of our public works group, and we actually haven't had anybody take advantage of it yet. And we have been able to make some hires, so I'm really proud of that one. I think it's very unique. It's up to $60,000 over 5 years for engineers and up to $20,000 for project managers over 2 years.
I hope some of them are watching right now.
I hope so.
What were those numbers again?
For the student loan repayment assistance,
Yes.
up to $60,000 over 5 years for engineers, up to $20,000 for project managers over 2 years. We also facilitated training for our city staff and managers on topics such as interviewing and hiring, leadership, managing performance, and communicating with employees. P+C completed a citywide compensation study, and we continue to review our compensation and benefits to look for creative opportunities to reduce out-of-pocket costs for our employees and the city's plans. We've provided in-person benefit education meetings to approximately 430 employees during open enrollment, and we're ramping up to do that again over the next 2 months. We prioritize risk and safety by launching an incident review board and building our building coordinator program. We also offered the opportunity to all employees to receive first aid, CPR, and AED training, as well as civilian response to active shooter event or CRAZE training. So we're very excited about that. And I'd like to end by sharing a few of the P+C goals for fiscal year 25. In the spring, we will launch our biennial survey of employee engagement to solicit feedback from all of our employees. Our departments will work with employees and leadership to create individual development opportunities and succession planning for the future. We will continue our focus on safety through training and initiatives that reduce our incident and accident rates. And to increase employee retention rates, save costs, grow our knowledge base, and support existing teams, we continue to look at our reporting and our metrics and how we want to track our accomplishments each month.
Robbie, do you do the survey engagement, employee engagement survey every year?
Every other year.
Every other year?
Yes. So that, and we typically do it in the spring. So 23 was our last one. That ran from about March until May. So we're looking forward to seeing how we compare to those next year. Thank you for your time this evening and for your support throughout the year. I look forward to next year, and I'm available to answer any other questions you may have.
Any questions, Council? None? Okay, thank you very much.
I do have one. You talked about the active shooter training. How was that coordinated? I assume the PD took the lead on that?
Correct. We have certified trainers for that program, and it was a voluntary basis. So I think it's a 4-hour course. We did it in one of our conference rooms.
How many people participated in that training course?
I believe we had 20 to 25 come through that.
And that was 20 to 25 outside of the PD, or is that 20 to 25 including?
Outside of the PD.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, some of our more public-facing employees, were very interested and have requested that.
So they're spread around the different departments?
Correct.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Wow, finished early. All right, having no further items on the agenda, we're adjourned.